Going from a 90% to a 100% disabled rating is by far the most difficult increase that you can get. But I'm here to tell you that it does not have to be challenging. It can actually be very easy with these simple steps that I'm about to lay out for you. These avoid the key common mistakes that most veterans make that ends up costing them $1,500 per month or more in benefits for them and their families. I'm Jordan Anderson with VA Claims Academy. Let's get into it. So I know better than anyone, this is an important issue and an expensive one. Look, if you're sitting there at 90% when you should be 100%, which is a lot of 90% rated veterans, this is a big issue for your household, for your entire life. We're talking about a tax-free passive pension that could be essentially a house payment or more. So why should you even believe me, right? This is me in the Air Force. I only did 4 years in the Air Force, never deployed. Now I have a 100% permanent and total disability rating from some injuries, some different other conditions, but it's mainly because I know the VA system in and out. And the whole reason for my existence, my reason for being here, is to help you get the VA rating that you deserve, which is exactly what we've done for thousands and thousands of veterans. Here are just some, photos as proof that this can happen. Yes, this is the most difficult increase to get from 90 to 100, but I'm going to make it as easy as it could possibly be, and you're going to have it step by step by the end of this video. So that sounds fair enough. Let's get right to it. So in the spirit of taking this decision seriously, part of sort of the calculation that you have to do is it worth it for me to risk my current 90% rating to try to push for that 100% threshold? I'll tell you, most of the time the answer is yes. And here's part of what factors into sort of that grand calculus that you need to do before heading in, because you don't want to jump in willy-nilly as someone with something to lose, being that you already have a 90% rating, okay? But you shouldn't be scared either. Here's part of what matters. Here's va.gov. This is the 2025 VA pay, for your disability ratings. Let's pretend that you're just the veteran, no child. 90% rating, you're probably familiar with this number right here. Don't worry, if you can't see it, I'll go ahead and highlight for you and zoom in. I'll just read it for you. 90% rating, you're looking at around $2,400 per month tax-free. It's a sizable amount. That's what we're talking about, right? Something to lose, right? $2,400 per month tax-free, sizable. However, when you jump up to the 100% rating mark, you're going to see here 100% disability rating, $3,974. So about $4,000 per month tax-free is what you jump up to with the 100% from 90%. Okay, that's around a $1,500 per month difference, $1,600 per month difference. That's a sizable amount. You don't need me to tell you that. There's also more benefits that come. Maybe your state has benefits, perhaps you're in Texas like where I am, or maybe Florida where you have a complete homestead property tax exemption. There's all kinds of different benefits, healthcare for your dependents that come with this 100% disability rating mark that maybe don't with the 90%. So that's one aspect, okay? So if it is even in the feasible, realistic reach of getting there, you may want to take action. What else matters with this decision? You need to know what your real VA rating is. Maybe you're, compensated at the 90% threshold, right? But what is your actual underlying VA rating? Because 90% could have been rounded up from 85%. Perhaps this whole time, and we'll jump into the VA disability calculator for a second, because that's the final part of sort of making the decision whether to apply for the increase or not. And then I'll show you exactly step by step how to get that increase from there. But you need to know, am I at 86%? Okay, which of course anything 5 and over is rounded up to the nearest 10th. So if you're at 75% rating, you get a 80% disability compensation. If you're at 85%, you get 90% disability compensation. It could be that you're at 94% and you're just 1 percentage point off from 95, which is rounded to that 100%. And that's a very different strategic approach than to someone who's 86%. who has a lot more ground to make up. So I would say that that is definitely going to be something that you're going to want to do once you realize, okay, hey, this is the pay difference. You're going to want to figure out what's your actual disability rating, the one that's not rounded to 90%. It could be that you're 90 out of the dot. That's pretty rare, but you need to know for sure. How do you know for sure? By the way, y'all, you're going to get so much value out of this video. If you could do me a huge favor and hit that thumbs up button, that would be amazing. This is how you know for sure what your VA rating actually is. You could look at your decision letter, okay, which may say that your actual rating is 88%, 87%, whatever it is. Or you could go ahead and look at your decision letter, and if it doesn't say your actual rating, you could go pull up a VA disability calculator, okay? You can log into ebenefits.gov, va.gov, and do this. So if you have, for instance, a mental condition, let's call it PTSD, call it anxiety, whatever it is, for 70%, which is pretty common. By the way, I'll link this calculator tool in the description below. That way you don't have to learn VA math and get a whole, master's degree in that. You can just let the calculator do the work for you. You have ringing in your ears. Okay, so you got tinnitus. That's a 10% rating. Let's say you injured your back and you're rated for back. You have a 10% rating. Here's what's so crucial and what could be a disaster, what many veterans make the mistake of by not following this simple step first, which is calculating, okay? So you got these conditions. Let's also say that you got migraines, and that's a 50% rating because it's affecting your paycheck, let's say, all right? So, and this combined gives you an 88% disability rating. This could be where you're at right now. Pay attention to this, dollar amount, which could change depending on some factors. So it'll be around this amount. But here's what could go wrong. Let's say you're assuming that you're at 90% disability because that's your rounded number, and you think that getting your sleep apnea service connected, which will be a 50% rating because you're issued, a BiPAP or CPAP machine, whatever it is, APAP, you're issued that breathing machine, and you know that that's a 50% disability rating. Let's say that, you're going through VA Claims Academy, you're a member, let's say, and we get you service connected sleep apnea secondary to your PTSD, or perhaps secondary to your back, and you think that that's going to get you to the promised land. What happens? We're actually at 88. Let's add that 50% rating. Watch this dollar amount to see if it changes. Boom. We added it. Why didn't it change? Right here. Look at this. Combined disability rating. Where are we? We're in heartbreak land. That's where we are. 94%. This is why it's key. You have to be calculated. When you're at 90%, rounded, you need to know exactly what you're doing, not only because you have the most to lose, but also because every single inch matters, because VA math stacks up against you the closest, the closer you get to that 100% rating mark. It's brutal, right? We just added a 50% monster rating and we're already 90% disabled. And guess what? You're still 90% disabled. That's number one to look out for. But it's not all doom and gloom, okay? I've got many clients that this has happened to. No worries, we take a second pass at it. We say, okay, you got PTSD for 70, that's average. Probably not gonna be very successful increasing that. Or maybe we are, right? If you have total social and occupational impairment, tinnitus, 10%, you're not increasing that. Back at 10%, you know what? That's pretty low for the back. What if we had back, instead of 10%, we do another go around for an increase on back now that we know that we're only 10% off of that 100% mark because 95 and over is rounded up, and we get that to 20% instead of 10%. Realistically, our clients would probably get a higher rating than that, but let's say only 20%, and boom, look what happened there. It made all the difference in the world. Okay, that's lesson number one. Know where you're at. That way you can know exactly where you need to go mathematically, okay? That way you can be the $4,000 per month camp instead of the $2,500 per month camp. If you're getting value from this video, hit that thumbs up button for me. Let's get to the next lesson. So that's what I call this, that sort of surveying that you just did of where am I at right now. Let's call that Recon. That's your reconnaissance phase. You're just getting the accurate scope of the battlefield. What chess pieces do I have available to me? What kind of risk could there be? That's where you want to start off, because you'll feel much better about your decision knowing that you're, in a good position, or maybe you're in a bad position and you say, "Oh wow, good thing I didn't apply for an increase." Why is that? That's the number two kind of warning. This is the what you need to know, is because you need to understand that when you apply for this increase from 90 to 100%, the VA is not just examining you for your new conditions you're applying for, or maybe you're getting an increase and you only have one condition that you're applying to increase. The VA is not just looking at that. The VA is liable to look and scrutinize your entire file. That means that the example that we had earlier, your PTSD is getting looked at again, even though you're not doing a PTSD claim. Your back could get looked at again. Your maybe you have plantar fasciitis, that could get re-examined. Why is that important? Well, it's because the VA, you want to get ahead of the VA. I always tell people, don't play fair against the VA. Don't fight fair. Why is that? Because the VA is looking for any opportunity to scrutinize and maybe poke holes in your story on paper to see if they can take ground away from you. This is what happens. If you have a bunch of conditions, which typically if you're 90%, you do have a handful of conditions that are service connected, you need to make sure that you play defense on those conditions. How do you play defense on those conditions? You need to make sure that on paper, these are still ongoing issues. Why is that? Because if you apply for migraines because you want to add migraines onto your conditions, but you're 10% rated back, you haven't been to the doctor for in the last 6 months, 7 months, year, on paper, what does that tell the VA? I'm healed. It's not fair, but that's what it is, right? This is an on-paper bureaucratic process. You're telling the VA, please take away my back rating on this go around, even though you're not claiming back, right? You're begging the VA to please take that rating away, which is why number one is Recon. What can I possibly get? What do I need in terms of percentages to close the gap between where I am and that 95% threshold, which of course is rounded up to 100. Number two is going to be defensive posture, okay? You need some defense. Artist rendition. Now it'll stick. First survey, the next defense. What good is it if you get granted service connection for something else, but you lose two of your other conditions in the process? You're just spinning your wheels, very frustrating. It took you 6 months, 7 months, all that effort to get nada, zilch. This happens to so many veterans. That's why it's so key that first you go to the doctor, create new visits for these conditions that you already have rated, go on paper so that way the VA knows when they get those new medical records that you're going to submit, hey, by the way, I'm actively getting physical therapy for my back still. There you go. That's defended. Now you can actually take ground while remaining safe, because again, what are 90%ers? You got the most to lose, so don't lose it. Now, I know what you're thinking, or maybe what you should be thinking. Jordan, maybe that could take a couple of weeks. Maybe that could take a couple of months scheduling appointments, especially if you're going to the VA, right? A couple months out, maybe, to where, you're scheduling appointments to get current again on these conditions. That's a waste of time. What could you be doing? Here's the quiz question for you. This is about strategy, right? We need to think. What could we have done, maybe even first, or at least in between the recon phase and the defense phase, where you're booking those appointments, getting current on those conditions? What could you do in order to freeze time on your VA claim to ensure that your backdated pay is locked in, and it doesn't matter that this takes a couple of months to get current? Create an intent to file. All right, it takes 5 minutes. It's super easy. You want to go to va.gov and you go to where it says file a disability compensation. You're gonna click through a couple questions. It's super easy, and it'll tell you, hey, your intent to file has been created. You have 1 year from today, the day you create this intent to file, to finish submitting your VA claim. That means that, hey, this takes a couple months, we're good. All it's doing is increasing that backdated paycheck, right? We had a gentleman that got over $100,000 one time in backdated pay from the VA. Life-changing stuff. You don't want to be on the VA's time. Make sure you're on your time. What do you do that? You lock it in with the intent to file, okay? So we'll even put this as step 0 because after you're watching this video, I want you to take that action, okay? I want you to go from thinking about maybe doing a VA claim to taking that first step, taking 5 minutes to lock in your intent to file date so that in the event that you find out that it's a good idea, that you actually could, maybe get an increase after you see these steps coming up here, that you have that locked in. If you do it a month from now, then guess what? Your backdated paycheck is worth $1,600 less, maybe more. Okay. I want you to save that cash. Don't waste any more months being underrated. Lock in that intent to file. If you don't want to do it yourself, your veteran service organization, whoever's helping you file, can do it on your behalf. Okay. Here we are. Now we can have some fun. We can get loose now. You're in a defensive posture. You know what's on the board in terms of how many percentages, because you use the VA disability calculator, again, linked in the description below and the pinned comment. You know what percentage you need. You know how to safeguard and protect your current ratings, and your backdated pay date is locked in. You've frozen your VA claim in carbonite like Han Solo. We're good to go. We're chilling. Now we can have some fun here. Yeah, it actually could be fun because now you get to go on the offensive. You get to strategize. This is where number 3 comes into play and what everyone kind of focuses on. But again, if you don't have these first 0, 1, and 2, then you're toast, right? You're going to be losing out on so much. So now we can strategize. How do we strategize? I told you earlier, if you're at 90%, it's probably because you have more than one condition. You might have multiple conditions that are service connected by the VA. That means you're getting a 0% or higher rating by the VA. And yes, 0% ratings count. That means that you're not denied that claim. That means that you're service connected, but for whatever reason, either it's not compensatable as a condition, or maybe the VA just doesn't see that it's very severe enough to compensate you. Why does this matter? Well, because when you have conditions to work with, let's say you have a back rating, doesn't matter what, it could be 0%, and you have a tinnitus rating, that one's always going to be 12% or 10%, but you have migraines that isn't yet rated, it's not service connected, and you didn't go to the doctor during service because who went to the doctor during service? Nobody, right? How do you get these migraines, or this new condition in this case, service connected? Well, it's good because you're at 90%, you have a lot to work with. And this is what I love doing for my clients at VA Claims Academy. Link to that is in the description below if you want me to help you with your VA disability claim. This is what you need. I have a couple of options here. When you're getting migraines service connected, I could say that, hey, you know what? I could write the Nexus letter, and our research team does the research, finding the peer-reviewed medical literature that explains and outlines the correlation between post-traumatic stress disorder and tension headaches and migraines, right? So we can go migraines, which is a 50% rating for a lot of our clients. We can do that secondary to PTSD. But we got denied. Okay, we got denied. That didn't work. The VA said, nope. Now what? Do we give up? Hey, sorry. Looks like 90% is just where you're at. No. There are other experts who think that, you know what? It's at least as likely as not, meaning 50% chance or greater. If something's 50%, guess what that leaves? A whole other 50%, meaning that you can get another Nexus and we can go, hey, you know what? That ringing in your ears and that buzzing, that pressure, that fullness in your ears, the ringing, that could be triggering your migraines. We're going to say that your migraines are triggered by your existing service-connected tinnitus, and because the tinnitus is service connected, meaning you're rated 0% or higher by the VA. That's what I mean by service connected. Not that you're saying it's service connected, that the VA has rated you 0% or higher. This is called a secondary claim. Do you see how having conditions already existingly rated opens you up to sticking other conditions off of those existing service connected, all right? So the tinnitus caused the migraines. Now this gets granted service connection, and we get that 50% rating. This is how you operate when you didn't go to the doctor during service. Because you can't tell the VA, yeah, I had migraines during service, but I just didn't go to the doctor. And oh yeah, I don't have any Nexus letters or doctor's notes in order to back me up and say that it's at least as likely as not due to service. You're just hoping that the VA gives you a gift. Do you think that's going to go well? It's not. The VA is not in the mood to give you a gift. The VA needs to see the documentation, the evidence. So this is what we do for clients, right? We help strategize. Where are you at? More importantly, I can write you a personal statement draft to where it articulates in the VA's own language and translates your true story into their language. That is key, but also a Nexus letter where you're articulating how your tinnitus triggers your migraines, how your PTSD gives you that tense in the neck and it works up and triggers your migraines, and get you the peer-reviewed medical research, which one makes the doctor comfortable going on record with that opinion because they're just agreeing with PubMed. They're agreeing with the research. And two, it makes it more difficult for the VA to tell you, no, it's not compelling. That's what you want. Don't fight fair against the VA. Fight with everything you got. Make it difficult. Make it the path of least resistance for them to approve your claim. If you're getting value from this video so far, hit the like button. We're about to wrap it all up. That's what I mean by strategize. It means, how can I leverage my existing conditions and connect them, in a compelling manner with my new conditions, or new, I say new, I mean new to the VA, as in the VA admitting finally that it's actually related to your service. You need to think creatively, or have someone who can think creatively in this process, because even certain things like your medication that you're taking for your service-connected hypertension, which might be rated at 0%, but your medication has certain common side effects that could be triggering these downstream conditions, right? Or perhaps your back rating, which is 0% because you're underrated for it, but that's impacting your ability to exercise, which has led to weight gain, which weight gain is the number one risk factor for obstructive sleep apnea. So maybe your sleep apnea is connected to your back. These are winnable things. You need to be able to think creatively, and that's the strategize step. That's the step, okay? Now I'm going to ask you for a second, what do you think the final step is before we submit? But let's just quickly review. First, before anything, you know what? I'm going to send off my intent to file because there's no reason not to. Even if I end up thinking that it's a bad idea to go through filing this increase because I'll be too much at risk, that's fine. The intent to file will expire and there's no harm, no foul. It takes 5 minutes of your time and you get instant momentum, and momentum is key in this process. Trust me. Number one, that's step 0. And then step 1 is reconnaissance. What percentage do I need extra in order to actually get me a pay increase? Because I don't want to do this for my health to where I'm technically getting a VA disability increase, but my pay is unchanged. You don't want to do that, right? It's too much of a headache. You need to do that reconnaissance to know what percentage that you need, and do you have the conditions that could add up to that percentage that actually makes a difference for you and your household. Number 2, defense. You need to be in a defensive posture. So now that you're locked in, you've frozen your VA claim in carbonite like Han Solo, you need to be sure that you're current on your appointments for all the conditions that you're rated for, be it 0% or higher. Unless it's like sleep apnea, right? No one gets treated for sleep apnea. If you have the breathing machine, don't worry about it. That sleep apnea is safe. 3 is strategize. Okay, how can I connect these conditions that I'm wanting to get service connected for How can I connect these to my existing rated conditions? Is there a viable path for that? Is there maybe my doctor who agrees that that could be the cause? That's key because it's the path of least resistance when you haven't gone to the doctor during your military service. After strategizing, what do you think the final step is before you're ready to submit? Well, gathering evidence, right? We alluded to it. Now that you have your strategy set to where, you know what? My ringing in my ears could be causing my migraines. My weight gain from my back injury, which is service connected, could have caused my sleep apnea. You need to get that on paper because the VA doesn't acknowledge reality. They acknowledge bureaucracy. That means that if it's on paper, then it exists. If it's not, then it doesn't. In either, class when the teacher would stomp their foot and it's going to be on the exam. Okay, this is all caps. Evidence, 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 evidence. On paper documentation. This is the holy grail in VA claims, especially when you didn't go to the doctor during your military service because you were tough. Let's be honest. You were busy giving them all you've got. You were sacrificing your body for this country, and you kind of trusted that you would be taken care of by them holding up the other end of the bargain, which is, don't worry, we got you. That's what VA disability is for. And then it turns out, actually, this process was not made to get you the rating you deserve. So now we need to fix that, okay? We need to fix that with medical evidence now. But you don't have a time machine. You can't go back to a service and start going to sick call and complaining. So what do we do? What do we need now in order to replace the gaping hole of medical evidence? Here's what I mean by that. Vets don't know. There's 3 types of evidence for your VA claims. 3 different types. Let's start with the easy stuff. Personnel records, right? So this is your DD-214, the fact that it says that you were at this duty location, the fact that it says that you have an honorable discharge. Those are personnel records. Let's fill this up. Boom, 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 boom. Check. We're full. We have our personnel evidence. We're good to go. Don't need to worry about that anymore. There's something called lay evidence, where you as the lay person, in layman's terms, get to actually write a statement to your VA disability rating adjudicator. You get to talk to your VA rater on paper directly, and you're afforded the opportunity to translate your story into the VA's language. Most veterans fumble this opportunity and either don't submit a lay statement and then complain that the VA denied them when they didn't do themselves any favors. Vets, we got to do better. Or you write lay statements and you just brain dump, you're just ranting and you're talking about everything, and you have 0 chance that your VA rater is even reading that. You think the government employee is taking time out of their lunch break to read your 4-page essay. Unfortunately, they're not. They don't care that much, right? You need to get straight to the point. So lay evidence, which again is what I write drafts for clients because I'm a perfectionist with the lay evidence, that needs to be filled to the tippy top. That means I want you to write a good, well-crafted, I call it ironclad, personal statement for each and every condition that you're filing, okay? A separate personal statement that is talking directly to how the VA needs to hear your story and translating, again, your true story into the VA's language. Hugely important. But here's what we're all missing, right? Lay evidence, we can all write that. We can write that right now without going to the doctor. What's missing from your file from service? Your medical records. You see that big gaping hole for medical records? That's not going to get it done. All right, we need to fill that somehow, even though you're out of the service. And we do that through 2 means. Number 1, Nexus letters. Number 2, medical studies. To back up your connections, right? There's a medical study that indicates that inner ear conditions such as tinnitus could be associated with vertigo, Meniere's disease, migraines. There's medical evidence to support these correlations. Even better if they support a causation. Must be peer reviewed, okay? Must be from key sources. That's why we have a research team that we limit to key common sources such as PubMed, right? You need these scientific journals that are well established and well respected, because you don't want any type of evidence on your claim permanently that is not compelling, that is doing you a disservice, right? Nexus letters. A Nexus letter is a doctor's note that's them going to bat for you and saying, you know what, in my expert medical opinion, it's at least as likely as not that this condition is related to this veteran's service, or that this condition is caused by this service-connected condition, which gets it service-connected by the VA. Does that understand? You understand that? A secondary condition could be caused by the primary condition that's already rated by the VA, or the doctor could just say flat out that, hey, you know what? This veteran's service, it's at least as likely as not that their service caused this condition. What's an example of that? Hey, this veteran was 11 Bravo. They have all kinds of foot problems. Plantar fasciitis, pes planus, shin splints, stress fractures, chronically. It's at least as likely as not that those crappy combat boots and those ruck marches, those road marches, those runs, running with the heavy packs, the ammunition, it's at least as likely as not that this veteran's service caused that. It's at least as likely as not that this veteran who was a mechanic in the motor pool or was jumping down from heavy machinery and had that impact, it's at least as likely as not that their degenerative disc disease was caused by that repeated traumatic impact, right? Jumping out of airplanes, air assault, rappelling out of helicopters, all that, connecting. You want a Nexus letter for that, because it's getting that doctor's opinion, which they may already have, but it's getting it on paper. Now it exists. And what does that do? That gives us the full claim where all three types of evidence are full. And you've done all you could. If you still get denied over and over again when you have all three of these, at that point, hey, you know what? Sleep well at night, because you did what you could, right? There's always a human factor involved, but don't for a second keep on blaming the VA and not pursuing what you truly deserve if you haven't given yourself a shot, right? So, if we know that being 90% when you should be 100 is an expensive problem, a financial life-altering problem, a life-altering problem if you have kids, if you have grandkids that you want to take care of, that you want to set up for the future, it's that big of a deal, then you're probably thinking the Nexus letters are probably pretty important or pretty valuable. You're right. And here's the problem. The Nexus letter companies know that it's valuable. That's why it costs so much. But is this a fair thing? Here's what we want to look out for. When trying to go for a Nexus letter, I'm going to let you know straight out. It's actually one of the rare instances where getting it for free is actually the higher quality option. Here's what I mean by that. If you could get one from your own doctor or doctors, it's even more compelling than if you were to buy an expensive Nexus letter from somewhere. Why is that? Well, because your own doctor, number one, is familiar with your own treatment, which is part of what the VA looks for. Is this doctor familiar with this veteran's treatment, with this veteran's medical history? What's the other thing? Your own doctor's name isn't on a million other veterans' claims. The VA is not seeing their name pop up over and over again thinking, okay, is this doctor really credible, or are they just charging to write a bunch of Nexus letters? These things matter. If this is resonating with you, if it's making sense, you'll know it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then you know, do what you like, right? But to me, it's a no-brainer to have your own doctor, if they're willing, which could be a long shot, to sign, not write, your Nexus letter. Sign, not write. Let's talk about that. You do not want to go say, hey, doctor, can you write a Nexus letter for me? Why is this? Number one, it's taking too much of their time away. It's a little disrespectful. right? You don't want to spend 40 minutes of their time trying to do this thing that they've never done. They don't really understand. Number two, if they do it for you, you're going to feel really bad because they just spent time and probably wasted it, because that Nexus letter, the VA is going to see and toss it out. Why is that? Because there's magic words. As always, the VA can't just take reality. There's got to be special magic words, legal jargon that needs to be included in this Nexus letter that your doctor is not going to be familiar with. Okay? So what do you want to do? You want to bring your doctor a template. Okay, you can look up Nexus letter template online. You can go to freenexusletters.com and download a free template, as well as see a bit of a course showing you how to bring this to your doctor, and get a pamphlet which educates your doctor and lets them know, hey, don't worry, you're not going to get called in or court-martialed for giving your opinion. This is cool. This is part of the VA claims process. It puts them at ease and even increases your odds at getting the holy grail of new medical evidence post-service, which is a Nexus letter from your own doctor, which again is free. That way they can spend 10 minutes editing the template, plug and play, sign it. Hey, they're good to go. They've done their good deed. And also you have something usable to finally win your VA claim, which could be life-changing, as we mentioned. Okay? By the way, last reminder, if you're getting value from this, do me a huge favor, hit the like button. It really helps get this to the people who need it. What happens for the rest of us who don't have a team of doctors just waiting, like, yeah, let me just help you out with your VA claim, right? This is the case for most of us. Okay, you're going to want to cut the check. All right, at this point, if it was me, okay, this is just me. If it was me and I knew from the reconnaissance, from the things I did calculations, hey, you know what? I'm like right there. And this could make a huge difference for my family. We're talking property tax exemptions. We're talking about maybe education benefits for my dependents. We're talking about free healthcare for my dependents. You know what? If it costs me $1,500 for this Nexus letter, I'm gonna invest that, right? So here's what you're gonna want to do. You're gonna want to make sure, if you can, you're gonna want to make sure your doctors are credible. This doctor team that you're paying, right? I personally recommend paying a premium for your Nexus letters, because that means, okay, you're paying for a board certified doctor's time out of pocket. It's not cheap. But also, the more expensive the Nexus letter, typically the less veterans are using, right? You're going to see maybe Nexus letters that are $600, $800. All the veterans are using those. Those doctors' names are popped up signing, right? All of these Nexus letters, the VA is seeing all of that, right? If you get a more premium Nexus letter, you're getting, number one, a more compelling doctor who has more compelling credentials, who's board certified, it's taken more seriously. But number two, the VA sees this doctor's name less. That's just the scale, law of economics. That's just how it is. That's what I would personally do for something that is so important, such as a tax-free passive pension for the rest of your life, right? It's a unicorn in the financial space, okay? I personally recommend vadisabilitydoctors.com. Full disclosure, I am the founder and curator of that website, but I created the website because there was a big problem with finding actual Nexus letter doctors that are credible, okay? So these are fully board certified heavy hitters, and again, it's not cheap, but you do not want to cheap out with your medical evidence for your VA claim. It's also worth noting that I write Nexus letters for my clients at VA Claims Academy. Link to that is in the description and the pinned comment. However, I'm not a doctor. I can't sign your Nexus letter, right? So if you have a maybe even a chance that your doctors will sign a Nexus letter for you, hey, it's even better if I can write it out for you. Better than a template, because guess what? My research team can give me and queue me up with those peer-reviewed studies to where this doctor gets it and it's like, oh man, yeah, I'm gonna sign this thing. I got all this peer-reviewed literature backing me up. There's no way I'm gonna get in trouble for this opinion. It's all right here. And it also is more compelling because it's specific to you, right? More than just a generic template. This is where I would go, all right? If you have to pay for your medical evidence, make sure you pay for your medical evidence. Here's one thing I want to note, and I'll let you go, all right? When you're paying for your medical evidence, it ain't cheap, okay? I need you to prioritize. I need you to prioritize, okay? If you have the choice between paying for your high blood pressure and your headaches, right? And we know this high blood pressure, you might get a 10% rating for, but your headaches, you've got symptoms that meet at least the 30% criteria with a good shot. Hey, if you're a VA Claims Academy client and I write that personal statement for you, you know that you might get 50 on this thing. What do you want to pay, 1,500 bucks for? Something that's going to give you a return. Okay. So I need you to, if you have a bunch of conditions that you're wanting to pay for medical evidence for, if you have hearing loss, you got to know that, hey, you know what? The VA might grant you this hearing loss claim, kick you over a hearing aid and give you 0% for it. There's no money in it for you, right? So do a little bit of homework on what's worth me spending for. Let me tell you right off the bat, anything mental, if you don't already have a mental rating, cut the check for, okay? Why do I say if you don't already have a mental rating? Because you can't get multiple mental ratings. You have one mental rating, doesn't matter how many mental conditions that you have, right? So if you're already rated for something mental, don't add on. But something that's at average 70% rating, yeah, you better believe that's worth spending for. Your headaches, your back pain, if you're a VA Claims Academy client, you know we go over the high value conditions and those are worth cutting the check for, okay? Just want to make sure, maximize your, cash for you and your household. Lord knows that the veterans deserve it, okay? Fellow vets, I hope this helped out. If it did, hit the like button, share this with someone who needs it. Definitely sound off below. Sorry about the long video, but I really hope that this helps out you and your household. This is the year you finally get rated what you deserve. Cheers for now.